This is basically part 2 here of New Adventurous Universal Seers, letting the people know why we're here, why I created the new presentation, what I went through to get here all these years, and at this age of 73, a lot has taken place, but there is a lot more going to happen and occur here as we go on with this world and what the, say, the dark forces, the cabal, or the world controllers are doing, because we are here and people are waking up and becoming more aware. It's very, very evident. And new Kevin Smith on YouTube. Kevin, they haven't kicked you off of YouTube yet, have they? You've got a lot of videos on there, right?
Yeah, I'm on my second strike, so one more and it will be, the whole channel will be deleted, but I'm still there at the moment.
What is the most popular site for the videos in that? Which one is that?
Well, the main alternative to YouTube is brand YouTube, so all my stuff is going on there as well. And
okay, brand new tube. Okay, all right. So is that all one word? I don't know if I've been on a brand new tube.
Yep, it's just one word.
Okay, and so they're okay with everything. So they accept something more real and what we call conspiracy theory, etc. Yeah.
At the moment, but the controllers are infiltrating a lot of what were alternative platforms. I think BitChute is sort of falling into their controlling hands as well, and so eventually they're trying to eat their way through all the alternative platforms. But at the moment, yes, that is the best place to go to upload videos. Yeah.
Yeah. So the interesting thing, many years ago, I saw a video on North Korea, and you cannot get into North Korea with cameras or anything or what have you. And actually, this was one of those TV channels that the History Channel, people from the History Channel, they snuck in cameras with a doctor that went over there to do eye surgeries for several days. He did like 100 of them or whatever. I'm pretty sure it was eye surgeries. And so they snuck cameras in with him. So he was taking pictures and videos along the way because they don't allow that in North Korea. Nothing. You have no internet. You have no cell phones. Everything. You look to the government, the leader. That's it. And so this is how they want the world, just like North Korea. Everything self-contained. So they let people loose to build things and whatever, and then take it over. So now they're curtailing everything, and eventually, poisoning, wiping out the surface. And just like the other planets, like Mars, etc., and the other planets, everything is tunneled underground. They will be underground. So they're fine with that. So that's basically the future people have to look forward to, unfortunately. And they want to think in their minds it's going to be better than that, or that sounds negative. Well, it's actually happening. It's really too bad, but there's a huge agreement, and that's why we're here, to let people know how their other 4 bodies work and how unconsciously they are subject to tap lining from the reptilians and other aliens that control the situations in the physical realm and the other levels in creation and dimensions, etc. Because there's a lot going on everywhere, and that's mainly unseen. And so this surface world projects itself a particular way, but it is just its own situation. That's it. Very, very limited, and nothing to rely on, that's for sure. So as long as we're here, we're doing this, and this really bothers the world controllers, because the Revasar and the Real Universal Guides are all through creation, and we are getting a lot of agreement. Again, we put the Queen of Orion away around 2018. I don't remember the day or the time. It's somewhere, but we have recordings on that too with the 2 seers that I were with at that time, who kind of stepped back because it took a lot of toll on them. Plus, they didn't want to go further, but that's their choice. So we have others, and especially Kevin here, the great witness, and others that are stepping up. Many Skypes that will let people know what's going on. And this is a huge journey. It is a huge journey. And it takes millions of lifetimes through so many embodiments to get to this point, to be able to start to recognize something else from the creative personal self we have all had to deal with for lifetimes. And as long as we're here in creation somewhere, we have to deal with this personal self. And it's hard for me too, here in the physical sense, and the silly stuff you have to deal with, etc. So, we appreciate people stepping up because it's for everybody, and we support those that support us. And it's very, very real, because all life is awareness. Very, very important. More so than consciousness. And this is very important to understand, because most people look to consciousness, which is simply something created, and it is necessary, but it is not the reality itself. And it is our real awareness as we go through this experience, and eventually as we do get through creation, a real life comes into view, in a real position to where this becomes something, you might say, unbelievable compared to anything in creation. And we've gone through the first big step in life to see what else there is. But that's huge for people to learn to recognize that and dealing with creation. So at the same time, all of creation is a reference, and we're providing the new references, the old ideas, words, chants, hymns, whatever, words, wisdom, old wisdom. It's not working anymore. It's just stuff that's out there floating around that looks good, that people like to attach themselves to, but it's not working. The new UU is the direct and real connection to all life. And that's the best part. And it's all basically unseen. And as this reality is what it is, it also provides light and sound. And in creation, that becomes the information and knowledge. And it is not the real light, but it is necessary to eventually recognize the real light and enter the real sound. Life is, and eventually the invisible reality, to be able to see what this reality is, because it is all endless. Okay, so we will go over some other parts here that occur in the physical realm and with my life, as I've gone through stages and things here. And Val too has went along with things, and you too, Kevin. You have done many things in your life also to lead up to this. And you want to give a little, Kevin, you want to give a little analogy of your life, and then eventually how you met the NuPresentation and us?
Yeah, so it does seem that my preferred avenue of creational activity is always along the lines of more the psychic sciences and magic and so forth. And as I've seen in real side experiences, has been revealed that that is usually what I tend to indulge in and chase and pursue. But then again, these type pursuits, although still are embroiling you in creation, they do move you along awareness wise, because they are more along the lines of risk taking pursuits, doing that which is generally beyond the norm of what most people tend to do, as they are rather resigned to the consciousness and however it has been fashioned and routined, which is generally very rudimentary, probably just generally the satiating of the thrill seeking in the various ways that is, which is usually along the lines of relationships and such. But so as that would be my general area that I would always be involved in, so would it project into this lifetime. And so from a very young age, I was always having very strange phenomena occurring, because obviously the effects of playing around with the psychic sciences from previous lifetimes, you do walk into the effects, not just in the lifetimes in which you indulge them, but they are projected into future lifetimes also. And so from a very young age, I had a lot of strange phenomena occurring. I would always have what seemed to be childhood friends, which later on it would be revealed by the guides they were in fact entities. But and also there would be lots of strange phenomena in my room, lots of strange lights, and what from a very young age I had what seemed to be these funny glowing planetoid-like orbs that would fly around my room, and things of that nature. And then from a very young age I actually got involved. I think at the age of 5 or 6 I became interested in transcendental meditation, which is an Indian idea, which is it's one of their schools of training where it's part of their religion, and you had these funny mystical words, and with those you were supposedly able to unlock facilities of the personal self, which would be able to have you more capable in creation, and it was more along the lines of a stilling of the mind, really. So in a sense, getting the consciousness out of the way, and so through that you would then be accessing your ethereal part. And so from a very young age I was involved with that, because my parents, particularly my mother, was involved in the transcendental meditation type stuff, and she brought me into it through. I got introduced to it through her, and then as things progressed, I would then become involved. I would then seek almost every spiritual path I could find. I would become involved in all sorts of meditational pursuits, all sorts of practices, everything from chakras to trying to think of all the ones that there were. There was everything you can imagine. All these different shamanism type things and Wiccan things and so on and so forth. And I became involved in all those, and I never knew exactly what I was looking for, because obviously everyone is primed really to come into creation to want to recognise the is ultimately, and that really is the driving force that has people go through all the courses that they do. Because I always felt that I was looking for something, but I could never find it, and so I would never settle for one thing. So I would do something, because some people, they would become a shaman, for example, and then they'll just sit with that and stay with that for the entire durations of their lives, or for very long durations. But I always felt there was something else, and with me, I would do something for a while, think that this is it, and then I would have a strange nudge or an intuitive urge. There was something else, and so I would, and so as I opened myself up to wanting to be more and see more, so would the opportunity avail itself, and then I would find something else. And as I said, I would go through all sorts of different pursuits. There were some courses that were even to do with the apparently the manipulation of your own DNA, or the activating of extra strands of it, and there was all sorts of strange things along those lines. And then as things progressed, I started getting into a lot of the magical practices. There was the Kabbalistic Hebrew type practices along the lines of wizardry, I suppose, which was dealing with a lot of phenomena and manipulation of creation. But that was very I'd found that rather boring, in fact, because it didn't seem to yield much results. Because like with most people, what they do is always generally thrill seeking, is always really to satiate everyone's incessant want for thrill seeking. like how Duane says, when people initially come to the new presentation, it was generally the personal self and its idea of what thrills it can get out of it that brought it to it in the first place. And then after a time, you then realise that it's not about that. It's about the awareness beyond the astral sensation body. But nevertheless, I then got involved in lots of quite magic type practices. They were actually quite interesting because I was creating these strange. I can't remember how they all went now. It was a long time ago, but I was creating these circles of theoretical protection in my living room, and then I was bringing forth or trying to make contact with all sorts of beings and entities and demons and such, but it was always the case of I was trying to make contact with other beings and creatures because I always knew they were out there, but almost trying to create conduits and the facilities by which they could come to me, and but later on that would evolve where the results are rather limited, and so I switched to another idea, which was if I can't bring them to me or if I can't make contact with these other beings and dimensions by having it feature on the physical level through my magical practices, then I would go to them. And that's where originally I started out with lucid dreaming, and then then I went into my astral projection, and I was very involved very heavily into that. And that was really the last thing I was doing before finding the new presentation, my astral projection, where I was just establishing. I mean, the state you need to astral project is actually that which you would need to be in the nowness of your real awareness, because in order to astral project successfully, you need to put the mind and emotions aside. And so that's why when often I recount my real side experiences, sometimes, very often, as my practice is, I tend to automatically be in this nowness state because it's such a practice before I go to bed. It's almost ingrained in my routine that very often I will find myself in the place where I can then astral project from, and so I will have an inadvertent astral projection. So although I don't pursue them anymore, I do occasionally have them almost by accident, because it's almost like the routine is set up with my consciousness, so it almost goes on as though on automatic pilot sometimes. And as I've described, sometimes if I sit in my between state, which is between the real awareness and between the real side and the physical level, then I have situations where elements and features bleed over from the real side and feature and manifest on the physical level, and there's all various sorts of experiences in that place, in that position, which I call the in-betweeny state, which again demands that in order for it to be maintained, you have to stay in this nowness aside from your consciousness of your mind and emotions, but don't allow yourself to go on the real side. You just sort of sit in that place and almost like bridging, almost straddling between the two positions. And also from that position, I mean, a lot of people have various methods of astral projection, but I more or less developed my own, and it was based on the realization that for me, I had to put myself in that position, have the consciousness put aside, and then do it that way, where other people had all these funny techniques like the rope climbing out of ladders and rope techniques and all this, that never really worked for me, because I found that when you're sort of considering these various ideas and techniques, you actually then are utilizing the mechanics of your consciousness, your mind, and even your imagination to do so. And I found it's far more effective to put the entirety of that aside, and then astral projecting you would go. And there was another funny, I suppose the very last sort of a spiritual based idea I was involved with before finding the new presentation was one referred to as the template. And they had some very interesting information. I don't know what the source of their information was, but their idea was that the reptilians had hijacked humanity, had manipulated the genetics, which had resulted in then a simulation which was almost like a mutant paradigm, which was not how it should be. And their idea was if they reset the genetics of the physical vehicle template, it would then project the simulation that we should be experiencing, rather than this strange, warped, distorted version the reptilians had created. And later on, I would see that they were actually quite close to the mark, because obviously, as the consciousness always affects the simulation, and as the agreements to the controllers have allowed the reptilians then to mould the consciousness according to their design, even though we have agreed to do it, for them to be able to do that to the consciousness, it is such that we are in the effects, the simulation of a consciousness that is through the manipulation of the reptilians, and therefore is a simulation that they would favour, which is one of control and restriction. And so in theory, realising that and then stepping aside from the consciousness and making decisions that are would not maintain such a distorted simulation would, in theory, changing the consciousness would change the simulation. So their ideas were well founded, but ultimately they made no references, as no spiritual courses or religions will. They made no references to what was beyond the simulation. They never spoke of the real guides. They never spoke of the real purpose of his recognition, or what creation is actually for, or its mechanics. Their idea was effectively, as a lot of spiritual ideas are, to create a better place in creation, a better positional spot. But of course that won't get them out of creation. I mean, it's a choice. I mean, anybody can have whatever they want. If they want to have a more favourable position in creation, well, that's fine, but they will still be in creation. And so what every other course and spiritual pursuit and religion is offering is nothing other than a rearranging of the deck chairs on the Titanic, effectively, because obviously with the simulator in demise due to the restriction through the agreements that are spiralling it into its deterioration, regardless of how nice you might temporarily have a creational spot in here, if the agreements are retained to with the consciousness which is based on restriction and control, then ultimately the simulator will implode, and regardless of where you are in creation, no matter how nice or how nice it may remain for a period, that will eventually be no more either. And at the time when in the template, these people they would do a number of ceremonies, which apparently you would look at these funny swirling shapes, these geometrical designs that they had constructed, and with these funny chantings and various other ideas, apparently this would reorder and rearrange your genetic template back to its original design. And they said, and their idea was, if enough people did it, there would be a critical mass, which would mean that then the simulation that effects from it would change. But again, when I was doing the very last ceremony, because this went over from I was involved with them from about 2012 all the way up until 2017, at the same time while I was doing my astral projection practices. And I remember, at the time, around about the time when their ceremonies took place in Glastonbury, which is a place not too far away from where we are, because being a tiny little island, nothing is very far from anything else. But we had to go down. It was about a 2-hour drive, I think, but just prior to signing up for the last ceremony, I had actually, again, I had that urge that at the time, as with all the things I did, I felt, oh, this is it. This is like the ultimate thing to do, and this is what I'd be looking for. But then while in it, I'd feel that urge, that nudge again, which probably was either intuitive or more likely perhaps the real awareness or a guide sort of giving me a kick up the arse sort of thing, or nudging me along, or trying to impress upon me there was something else. And so I would come to recognise this nagging feeling and know there's something else. And even though I thought the template must be the ultimate thing, because this seemed to be describing the whole plight of humanity, the reptilian influence, and how the idea is to make it a paradise in creation rather than the mutant paradigm we had been effecting through the reptilians' manipulation of the genetics, which would be their managing of the consciousness with our references. I got, even when I signed up for the last ceremony and I was there in the hotel room before it was happening, prior to that I had the nudge there was something else, and so I went with it as I did, and I went online and I came across one of Anton's, the Russian, one of his videos, and it was part 1 of the 7-part breakdown of creation and what's really happening. But where the one where Duane was basically going over the entirety of creation, the real awareness, and making mention of all the references and such. And I started listening to those, and again, it was at that point when, as I said, I get the nudging inclination there's something else, and then when I find it, I know that's what I was looking for, and I had that feeling again. And then from there, having listened through those videos, I then came across the website, I think probably by Kelsey, who managed that at the time. And then I ordered the first new book 1. And so while I was in the hotel at Glastonbury preparing for the ceremony, which was the next day with the template, I was actually reading through new book 1. And as I was reading it, suddenly I had the dawning realization, or the recognition, that what they are doing, even if they were to pull it off, would simply be just a repositioning in creation, but it wouldn't get you an inch out of creation. And it was at that point where I thought, well, I'll complete this final ceremony, but when it's done, I would then call it a day and wash my hands of it and move from it. And so from there, I then contacted I think some people through Facebook. I can't remember who now, but I started attending some of the Skypes, and then became involved with that. And then I saw that part of the process involved that it's not just a case of just reading the books or singing the NuUU song. I realised part of it was the idea was to earn your way, and so as you share and promote the so does it share. It's to share and facilitate your awareness and recognition of it, with everything equaling itself. And so as I came into it through videos Anton had done, I felt that it was the way that I would be my main foundation of sharing. And so it started from there, really, where I would always, that would be my foundation of how I would share, would be through the videos. And then with me, almost fairly straight away, when I came into the NuPresentation and I started seeing in the NuUU, I was having real side experiences from the beginning, because again, I was always very open to exploration anyway, because as I said, my consciousness has always been designed in a way that I always was inclined towards psychic sciences or exploration, and as real side experiences would reveal, I had done a lot of astral projection and various magical pursuits in the past, and so I just seemed to, and so my consciousness was such that it was very much designed that I had the facility to be able to have the real side experiences, and then of course it came a point where then the interpretation of them was required, because at first I didn't know what was going on with strange phenomena and such. But as time went by, and as I continued with my process of awareness, so would I begin to recognise more so what the real side experiences were representing. And I said I came into the NuPresentation in I think November of 2017, and so carried on throughout it since. Had lots of ups and downs. Had lots of because it's quite a process and quite an endurance test, and I can't tell you the amount of times I've fallen flat on my face and while doing it, and gone off on funny tangents and this and that. But as time has gone by, and more I've been trying and focusing to refine my intent through my 5 vehicles, and even though the ups and downs continue, and with the personal self still nagging away as it does, because it's very adamant about what it wants and how it's constructed. As I said, my personal self always wants to do all the thrill-seeking adventures and astral projections, going here and there and somewhere else, and yeah, that's all very fine and good, but it is ultimately about getting past all the ideas of creation and all the phenomena that occurs within it. And I do have to be very careful that I don't get enticed through the magical side of stuff, because that has always been my thing. And sometimes when we were doing the movie reviews and I'm seeing these movies about all these people manipulating magic and stuff, and I sort of know I've done that not just in this lifetime but in previous lifetimes as well, so I have to be very focused not to that would be my main trap, I suppose, being drawn into that again. So that's what I have to be very wary of. But nevertheless, I'm still here, and that brings me up to this present moment. And so there we are.
That's terrific, Kevin. It really is. It's so great that you're here. It really is, because all the years I've been doing this since Paul was here, and all the people and experience that I've had too. And yes, the personal self, it drags us through everything, doesn't it? And it's got so many, you might say tentacles on itself to just everything. And with it, we are really connected through the five bodies to all of creation, and we're dealing with it, and we feel these things, etc. That we experience them, and intuitively, and what have you. And again, it's about recognition. It's about what we're recognizing, what is taking place, and this is where we really need the knowledge. And all that you've experienced, or anybody coming to this point, which I call the NuNowness, because it it rewrites history. Instead of dragging all that old stuff with us, I saw at a point that, you know what, enough. It's the NuNowness, and let all that stuff be. I'm not going to drag any of that stuff. I'm going to use it as a reference of what not to do. So we've already been through it. And so you yourself, very intuitive fellow, because you get those nudges, and I went through things like that myself, where those nudges or hints hit me. They just are solid, and so and it's time to move on. And so with me too, leaving the family and everything at the best of times. And I'm not saying anyone should do this. Everybody's different. We are each the decider, but all through that, and I went through a lot of things too before I came into Paul's creation, what he called Ekankar, the ancient science of soul travel, in his day. And he started too with astral projection by location, he called it, and then eventually into moving the awareness through the various bodies, which he called soul travel. And actually, anybody that came into EK, I used to know people, and I had done astral projection myself, but then all of a sudden it all stopped. Because it's about moving the awareness, not projecting, because it's an isness now. But in those days, that really wasn't the reference. But what you've learned through your process and you sharing here, which is great, is you know what not to do now. But again, it's still there. And it's I saw movies many decades ago about people that were addicted to drugs like cocaine and whatever. And actually, they basically fessed up that after the first couple of times, because it was such an exaggerated thrill to the personal self, they were always chasing that original thrill again to have the difference. But eventually it blended in to where there was no difference. Now it was just getting high and being stupid. And so those that came off of it and went through whatever they did, they said that the urge is always there. It is always still there, because again, this is how the personal self is, just like anything we have in our computers, unless we can completely clean it out. So yes, dealing with the personal self is the huge hurdle, and getting people to take the risk to see more. That is huge. And see, you're one of the few that came through that. One of the very few. That's why we don't have many on the Skypes. We have 20 people on a Skype. That's a lot. We have 25. Whoa, that's like a stadium full, because it is about awareness. And yes, as you see, because you've become the great witness here through what you've known, and eventually through all this prompting and the reading and what have you, and meeting the real guides, myself and others on the real side, all of a sudden you have the awareness to see what's going on. You become the great witness here, and this is very necessary, because there's only one purpose here, and that is to show people how to wake up. It's not about a membership or a path or looking to masters and gurus or any authority at all anymore. We did all that. That's done. Gods, saviors, all these things, etc. The reptilians invented all that anyhow. Paul utilized that at the time because he was the babysitter, and I've said that many, many times. And so what you have out there is you have a lot of babysitters. They're babysitting people, and they have their ideas. And that template or Templar situation you were in there, they're trying to redo things. It's kind of like people trying to redo the government. And you'll notice that they're thinking in their own minds that they're going to redo it by making more laws, making more restrictions. And what they're really doing is they're adding to the load. They're not sorting things out. They're simply adding to the load is all it is. And it's not doing it. It's actually going to make it more confusing, etc. So it really doesn't work. I remember, and probably was the 70s. There used to be this called the Schick Center to stop smoking. It was very popular. I don't know if it was over there, but it was very popular here. And it was really kind of a mind control thing to where if you'd be in a room, and if you touched a cigarette, you'd be zapped with electrical impulses. Well, what this does is this sets up a situation, and I'm sure some people succeeded. I didn't smoke. I don't know. I just saw it would be advertised on TV at the time when they had smoking in that, and it was very popular. They were advertising it for people to stop smoking. Well, I saw it. I looked at it, and I saw that, all this does is add another aberration to your subconscious mind, along with the habit that your body and your mind and your senses and your subconscious already have. So it's just masking the so-called cure or whatever, but the urge in that is still there because you still have tap lines and what have you. And this is where the real guides come in, where they can start to alleviate and eliminate these things eventually. And again, earning your way is very important because they want individuals that are sincere. Very sincere and real, and not just wishy-washy and come around and actually, because that affects others. So again, it's like letting someone into your house. You want them to be, honorable and sincere and what have you, unless you're a criminal too and you don't care. But if if your household is set up a particular, you don't want to just let anybody into your house. And so this is the same way with the real guides. They put us all through a lot. It's like boot camp, only a lot more to get us ready to be able to move into different areas through creation and eventually into the real universes. So we're not disrupting others. That's the whole idea. So what's so cool about this is eventually you get to the point, and again, I call it the NuNowness, to where it is about recognition, and each individual does it on their own. It's not about looking to any deities or whatever. The all is not a god or a deity. It does not control life. It is life, like the air we breathe. And just like the air we breathe, it's an isness, and it doesn't decide for us. We decide to breathe every moment, or we decide to stop breathing, etc. That's a decision, and most people don't even consciously breathe. They don't even consider it. But the isness life is just like that, and it's everything, but you need to learn to see it and recognize it. So Paul created a God worlds chart, but it was really literal. It's like, okay, well, you go from here to there and you'll get into a better place, but it's not about that. And yes, there are places that are better in creation, but they are limited. And like I've said in the books, the designated heavens, just like here, just like what's been created on Earth, all the cities and places, etc. And yes, the Earth has had its natural environment. There are other natural environments that are wonderful, other places and other planets in this realm here. But they are simply places, is what they are, and many of them have been created because you can, from the astral into the mental, to the mental worlds and realms and regions, you can create things by thought. Things can happen very, very fast. And this is how the reptilians and that have duplicated the real universes, and the real guides do this too. They do their own creativeness for the benefit of people to go through the steps to eventually be totally free, and this is where you are being to being. I called it being isness in the books. You are being to being, and it's not like here where we have relationships that we've created as mother and father, daughter, friends, whatever, and this is all fine. But we're really each awareness and being, utilizing these bodies to eventually recognize what is more real than just temporary restricting creation. So huge process, and the deciding of that is very, very interesting. And when I took the Rod of Power, and after 30 years or so in Paul's teaching, basically, even though Darwin and Harold were there, I was to go through that too so I could see what not to do. Well, when the Rod of Power came along, I was first introduced to the influence on the real side. And this lady would play a huge role, this reality that represents the consciousness, the influential consciousness that is throughout all of creation that most people do not recognize at all, etc. Not even the reptilian controllers really recognize it because they're just into their heads also. And also I really recognized as the awareness became very, very now and real, and this reality was with me, intent. I saw that basically everyone that I knew did not recognize their intent. And yes, people have intentions. Their intent is to do something, but it aligns itself with their personal self. It's an idea they have. But the reality of this is very, very real, and that is the real awareness. And it's very, very important to know this and recognize this because everything comes from our awareness. We set our lives up in routines, this is for sure. But when we make an alternate decision, you know, just like driving the car, we go back and forth to work, the same road every day, but all of a sudden we decide, you know what, I'm not going to work today. I'm going to take a right turn. I'm going to go to the beach, and the heck with it. They fire me, I don't care. So again, see, that decision is made by the real you. You see, it's not just going along with the routine, because when you're driving along, you don't even really have to pay attention because you already know consciously and unconsciously the route. You can almost close your eyes and drive there and back realistically, because intuitively and unconsciously it's automatic. It's all set up. You can basically do that. You can probably even time the signals or whatever. But this is how routine we get in. This is necessary to have this mind vehicle, this physical vehicle with the senses. And just like a computer, you know, eventually as you go to certain places on the internet, it recognizes those places you've been and your passwords and whatever, it saves them, etc., unless you know, consciously change it. And so this is where you come into a real conscious consideration of really taking a look through creation and how things have been set up and what's going on. And so most people want to pretend that it's to be according to what they want. All right. They want the world a certain way. They want things a certain way. And so they're pretending that it's going to be like that according to them. So no matter what's happening in the world, like right now, if this place lasts another 10 years on the surface here, I'll be amazed because of how poisoned we are, probably maybe 5 years, whatever it is. You tell somebody that, the average normal person, they're going to go, oh, I don't believe that. I got things to do. I've got places to go. And in the future, I'm buying real estate. We're going to build houses and blah, blah, blah. See, that's all in their mind. It's all in their mind. And they're thinking that through their personal decision that the world is going to comply. Yes, and you want it to. You're hoping it will. When it doesn't, whoa, then you got to deal with it. And so, so much of what we're doing is also a preparation because, yes, as things happen, the personal self will panic. So it's best to prepare itself, you know, just like a mountain climber, be prepared to fall. So that's why you've got all those ropes around you in case you do, because once in a while one of your little pins comes out of the rock and you are hanging out there in space, and whoa, you got to pull yourself back up. So this is a heck of a climb, but realistically, it's an isness now. This is the best part of it. So I brought all this together from what Revazar and the Real Guides have brought with Paul, and then Paul and Revazar on the real side, they're like my parents, and so they guide me along with this. And I just learned to see into the isness what is next, and have created all that I have here as different avenues for people to reach people, to give them this opportunity. And they many times intuitively know within themselves that it's a heck of a lot, so they step back. Talk to many people. They have the real side experiences, certain ones. We let them know what's going on, etc. And if they want to move on further with it, and we'll let them know more. But most of the time, they say no, because that personal life is. Appreciate your candidness all the time, Kevin, for what you've gone through on the real side, and the this and the that's and the confrontation, etc. But your position here is very, very valuable. I put everybody in front of me. The thing is that I am just grateful to know this, and for all those people that step up, and all the Skypes that we have, and just listening to the experiences that people have. Again, I'm just very grateful, sincerely grateful that I'm part of this, and I can share. I always feel that I don't do enough. I always want to do more. So we've got a lot of things coming up here. I'm always trying to get funding for the projects, to start the community, self-sufficient communities, etc., and rainforests and what have you with the nonprofits, just as something to show the world what's going on, plus joining many other groups, etc., around the world to get the notification of what we're doing. But we're pretty far out there. So at the same time, we have to deal with the reptilians and the world controllers, because they see everything we're doing. And so this is how it is, because you might say it's do or die, because what's going on. And yes, most people don't realize the black holes in the galaxy and what have you. They're very, very real. And so overall, this was this talk, etc. These talks are mainly centered on the Queen of Orion. So originally, when I was going over this years ago with some people, and really looking at how all this started, etc. And yes, originally this planet with the Linky and Inky and Leo, and I know them. I made deals with them, etc. They're out there. They're in their spaceships out there around the Earth, etc. But again, they have personal selves, and they're afraid themselves. And all these reptilians we're dealing with, and all these aliens, etc. These people that have this technology, again, you look at the indigenous people and compare it to them, they don't have all that stuff. And you know what? They don't have the fear that these aliens have. And right now I'm talking to the aliens, and they don't have to have the fear. I wrote some books on this. And one of the book titles is "They Do Not Have to Be Afraid." And this is very, very evident. And they put this on, the governments and what have you, put this fear upon the people, psychologically reversing everything, making the masses, the public, etc., thinking that they are to fear, or they have the fear. But really, it all stems from the instigators that are doing this. It's because they are afraid. So if you're raised with parents that are afraid of everything, you're going to take that on too. You're going to take that emotion on. And my former mother that was here, she was a good person, just your average person, worked at your average jobs, but always took care of things. She had her situations, alcohol, cigarette smoking, and boyfriends, etc. When I came through this vehicle, parents were married for about a year. Then there was the divorce, because I know she was fooling around, etc. And I don't mind saying this, because this is what we've gone through for lifetimes, and this personal drama stuff will continue as long as people keep putting their attention. But really, once they find a purpose to their life, it's kind of funny. It's like, why did you come here? Did you get a job? That's ask anybody that. Why did you come to Earth? And was it to get a job and to do all these funny things and just become involved and go through all this silliness? No, you came here to wake up and see what's going on so that you have a reference of something more to compare to as you learn to see and recognize with your real awareness. And most people do not realize that everything is awareness. It's just engaged in different body types. If it's a bug, if it's an ant, if it's a fly, if it's a horse or a duck or a fish or whatever, what moves these things along and operates them and animates them is awareness. So it's just like if you put your hand into the water, the fish swims away because it is aware, you see. So it has its own defenses. And just like a fly, you try to swat it, it flies somewhere else. You chase an ant, it's going to try and run away, etc. Or anything, or any little animal like a squirrel or what have you. For the most part, they are afraid of others. And this is the reality of the so-called communication with everything. Once the individual, and you have to practice this a lot, and it is a lot because you got the personal self, to be able to communicate with everything, because everything is awareness. It's just learning to, you might say, the language of the real. And it's not really a language. It's really just, you might say, an acknowledgement. That's all. And so on the real side, the real universe is standing there with the real guides or whatever. It's not a matter that you have to do anything. It's all recognition. That occupies your total awareness to where you don't want or need anything created or think anything or etc. It's not about that. You recognize and acknowledge what the situation is, the reality of it is, and that's the best part because it's a total completeness to where there are no restrictions and no authorities. The all is a reality itself, and its endlessness is the isness. Life is, it just is, and we decide how to, you might say, align ourselves with this reality. It's more so than any so-called vibration. These things affect agitation, creation. And again, that's necessary. And yes, we do need things, good vibrations, bad vibrations, what have you, good food, bad food, all these things, good friends, bad friends. We go through all this, happiness, sadness, what have you. This is in the personal self and creation, and it's all fine because it's necessary. And if you know and you have the intent to get through it, you can. But it is huge, and it take you the rest of your life or even longer. Paul's idea at the time, because the idea was the master idea, because this was floating around for who knows how many centuries, was 25 years. Well, as the years went by, and there was initiations at that time, and I left the corporation, and after getting the rod of power in 2001 with the 7th initiation, which was very real, but Rebazar was giving me all the initiations, the real initiations on the real side up to the 14th circle, which was the so-called Mahanta consciousness that Paul referred to. As Darwin and Harold came in, they were nowhere near that. They had experiences on the real side. I had many experiences with them too, and even in the physical, etc. It's all valid, but that wasn't it. And I was being prepared for something else that even at that time, taking the rod of power, I could not see. And so it took time, and I had to go through a lot eventually to where, as I started writing and as the years went by, it came to be so to where we are now. And it's taken a lot to get here, of going through a whole lot to get this reality, to have created this new presentation, etc., to get it to here.